Good day, everyone. This is the Heroes podcast, and I've got someone special here for you today. His name is Robert Butwin. How are you, Robert?
I am amazing and glad to be here and looking forward to sharing some different insights and perspectives with your audience.
Beautiful. So Robert is a business strategist, a networking mentor at Success Strategies. He's been out and about in the industry for 20 plus years, as I understand. You are in the Hall of Fame. And I want to know, what's been the journey for you? Have you always been so empowered from inside? Or was there a time in your life when, Robert, maybe share your story? What was the inner journey for you?
Sure. And I'm happy to share my journey because there's always different insights and perspectives that you can gain from anybody that's gone through that journey. It's like when I grew up, our family, my grandfather started the high school award cheerleading jacket business in the 1930s. Oldest son, third generation, always expected to run that family business. Challenge was there was too much family in our family business. As I was growing up, my mom sort of like shoved education down my throat, which I resisted. So, it was always expected, and this is all going to lead somewhere. I was always expected to go to college. And I went to college and I got a degree, but I didn't get the education, so to speak, because again, I was going to go right into the family business. Well, after working in our family business for, approximately 10, 12 years, I came to the realization that that was not going to get me where I wanted to go or where I wanted to end up in life. So I realized I had to make some kind of an adjustment. And as I was trying to figure out, because we all have different challenges, how to create the kind of lifestyle that I wanted. And so I started ending up running a nightclub where the owner had just sabotaged the results that he had created in that nightclub and brought it back to the number one nightclub in the Twin Cities. And there's stories behind that. But that wasn't where the challenge happened, because I was still working in our family business. That was just like a side situation. I was making good money, don't get me wrong, but that wasn't going to allow me, because as I brought it back up to the number one nightclub, I didn't realize that the owners actually wanted to sell the club. They didn't come to me. They found an outside source. And ultimately, so I still had to figure out things. And I had a defining moment. And let me share with you that defining moment. Somehow I came across a cassette tape series by Wayne Dyer called No Limit Person. And I came to the realization that the limits that existed, I was responsible for them being there. So I reflected back. Yeah, I went to college, but I really didn't get an education. So I had to make up for lost time. I had to create the kind of mindset that would help me create the kind of results with certainty. And so I started changing my mindset by pouring into different kinds of information, everything from Jim Rohn, Dr. Robert Anthony, Zig Ziglar. I just became a sponge for information. See, once you realize that you are responsible for what is, you can take it for what will be. But unfortunately, most people are in a state of denial. And I love the acronym of denial. Don't even notice I am lying. They end up settling to living a life of just getting by, trading time for money, trading time for dollars. And so I changed my mindset, and then I got into action using faith. I didn't exactly know how things were going to turn out, but I knew they'd turn out. But in the beginning stages, one of the books I ended up reading was by Dale Carnegie, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. And so I came to realization that if I was going to continually worry about the future, chances of me creating the kind of future that I wanted was probably not going to happen. So I focused on just changing my mindset, listening to and getting into action.
Very powerful. I was just thinking, when was the moment when you found out school is not education? It's not the life education that you need. Was this the same time when you picked up that book or before?
I think it was a little bit after
Hmm.
that, because I had to change my mindset. I mean, at that point, I hadn't come to the realization that it was there. I mean, after I broke through, after I started changing the things that I put it in my mind, an analogy, and I've gone to a lot of different seminars. And I remember a guy in one particular seminar, he gets up with a glass of Coca-Cola and a pitcher of water. Well, in the glass of Coca-Cola, it's obviously dark in color, the water's clear. And so he starts pouring this pitcher of water into the Coca-Cola, and the more water that goes into the Coca-Cola, it displaces some of the dark color of the Coca-Cola, and it becomes clearer and clearer. So as I went through the experiences, I mean, the stuff I learned from reading books, attending seminars, and listening to cassettes and CDs enhanced my belief system. But getting it into action and creating results, that's when I came to the realization that the education that I got from going through the formal educational process wasn't allowing. I mean, it did, obviously it was important. It's like one of the biggest things I learned from college is I learned where to find information. When I came across the cassette tape series from Wayne Dyer, I came to another realization of where I could find out information that would allow me to create the kind of business acumen that I wanted to. And, I as I reflect back, a lot of the things that I spent a lot of money on, cassettes, books, seminars, you virtually can get them all for free if you know where to look on YouTube.
Absolutely, I agree, Robert. There's so much on YouTube now. And I've got to say, there is so much distraction on YouTube, crap, that are not feeding the mind. And that's what I've heard from you, that you realized you've got to filter what you're feeding into your mind, because eventually that would define the results that you're going to get. And you really have taken charge. Very powerful. Do you want to expand on this?
Sure. I mean, obviously, as you go through the process, in whatever it is, once you see this vision of the reality of what you want, and as long as you're congruent with your goals along the way, the vision is the long, the picture in the future of what you want to create. You've got to be congruent with your goals, and you've got to realize what Murphy's Committee is. And one of the guys that I was coaching and working with, he created a great audio, and you can find it on YouTube by Jerry Clark, called Murphy's Committee, because you inoculate yourself from anything and everything that can possibly go wrong. Because you hear the saying that most pioneers end up along the side of the trail with arrows in their back. So you've got to realize what are the things that can go wrong. And it's like, as we're in action, we're all going to have different experiences. And a good friend of mine, Doris Wood, used to tell me, experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. You get an experience. So the point is, as you have different experiences, does that validate the lack of your success? Or do you use it as a stepping stone to ensure the fact that you're going to be successful? Because you're not going to quit. If you've got the faith, the belief, I mean, obviously we might have to modify the things that we do, but if you've got the belief and the faith and the vision, and you're staying in alignment with your goals, and you don't quit, ultimately you will break through whatever you need to break through. It might take you longer than you want, but here's one of the key aspects of that. Everything that you go through is going to serve you, because as you're going to end up, and you will end up mentoring other people, you're going to be able to look them in the eyes, speak from the heart, and be more empathetic and be more relatable, because you've gone through similar but different challenges. And that's part of probably the biggest reason why you're doing a lot of what you're doing, is because you want other people to realize that there's always a solution. There's always a way to create the kind of success, no matter what it is that you're doing, that will help you create whatever you want, live your dreams, be that of living a life of meaning based on the success you get.
Powerful. Would you say, you mentioned mentors, I picked it up from what you said. Would mentors being for you corner blocks or pillars of your success, would you say?
Definitely. I mean, when I started off, I had what I call indirect mentors. They were the cassette tapes, the books that I was reading. But as you continually go forward, and there's an old saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And my first live in the flesh live mentor was a guy by the name of Robert Butwin. Now, I remember, John Assarath, who was on The Secret, and, as he tells his story, and he talks about how he was struggling in the beginning stages until he found a mentor. And this mentor asked him that one but powerful question. And that question is, are you interested or serious about being successful? And based on how he answered it would determine if that mentor was going to take him on and mentor him.
That's extremely powerful. You've mentioned about the voices, Murphy's comedy. Would you say that Murphy's comedy that plays up for a lot of people's minds, is that pretty much subconscious conditioning and doubts?
It definitely is, and there's ways to release it. And one of the people through my networking that I've come across, and there's multiple different people that got their own methodologies of how to release it. I was lucky. And the reason I say lucky, and I come up with an acronym for lucky because it's, taking the last letter in the word lucky is Y. Everything begins with you, but the other part of luck is laboring under correct knowledge. So I was lucky. And early on, one of the things that I came and listened to was something by Michael Gerber, which is, he wrote the E-Myth and the E-Myth Revisited. The E-Myth stands for Entrepreneur Mythology. And he starts off saying, he says 4 to 5 businesses are going to fail in the first 5 years. If you're one of the 20% that makes it through the 4th, 5th year, so don't breathe a sigh of relief, because 4 out of 5 of you are going to fail in the next 5 years. Then he went on and explained why. But here's where I was lucky. I was listening to him, and I'm listening to my self-talk at the same time. And my self-talk was telling me, I'm not going to fail. I get the fact that most people are going to fail, but my self-talk was telling me at the time, and I'm listening to it loud and clear, because failure was not an option. And I love the acronym of FAIL, which is for all I've learned. And so since failure is not an option, I looked at everything as an experience, knowing and always have programmed myself that I have the ability to break through whatever challenges that I might be dealing with.
Wow. What a journey. And what a psychology that you've had. I think that's the most powerful way to look at life and business, to look at it almost as the best personal development course. And in many ways, it's the hardest one, especially for some people who are coming from the employee background. And how are you serving people now, Robert? What do you do for them, or how are you helping?
Well, actually, I could reverse it to you, because you and I, and that's where we met, because, part of it goes back to what I slightly mentioned about living a life of meaning. And to me, living a life of meaning is helping more entrepreneurs, but I'm out networking. I invite people to do a free half-hour conversation. I don't try to pitch them. I focus on what I can do to be there of service and value. I've compiled a lot of resources. I've got a lot of wisdom. And part of what I've come to the realization, and I've come up with another acronym, which is USC. It's like when I understand the other person by asking different kinds of DQs, defining questions, so that I can understand what they do, what they're doing, difference, what they do and what they're doing, what they want to accomplish. Because if I understand that, it's like understand where they are, where they'd like to be, and figure out in relationship. And it's not a one size fits all. Because the reality is people are either looking for visibility, they're looking for clients, they're looking for help with automation, because many people in my age group and even younger have allowed technology to pass them by. You know, I like to quote my cousin now, and as I say this, I've never met him. His mother was at my wedding, but he won a Nobel Prize in literature in 2016. And he had a couple songs. And the first song was Times Are Changing. I'm sorry, no, the first one was The Answer, My Friend, is Blowing in the Wind. That was written 60 years ago. That was then. Now today, the answers are in the cloud. But then he wrote another song, which in the song, the lyrics were, you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone. The times are changing, my friend, by Robert Zimmerman. Now, as I talk about that, I think about where things were when I started my career in a business. Remember, I haven't worked a job since September 7th, 1990. So look at all the changes that have happened since then. There was no Facebook, there was no WhatsApp, there was no Google, there was no, it's like today, if you want to have an answer of things, because it's in the cloud, all you have to either do is ask Siri, Google, or Alexa, and they can give you an answer just like that on almost any question that you ask. So the way I'm serving people is focused on, number one, understanding where they're at, helping them get some kind of validation, my insight, perspective, wisdom that will help them elevate and accelerate their success. That's how I live a life of meaning.
Robert, I love this. And if you're listening to this, I want you to reach out to Robert, because the resources that he has is absolutely amazing and extensive. If you don't have a blueprint to take your life to the next level and have access to, you need to ask the questions from the right people who have done it. That's the other thing that I seem to come across. Most people have their usual advisors, mom, dad, best friend, and probably it's time to have a look at the results. Have you got any example about connection to this, Robert?
100%. And I think almost everybody will relate to this, because when I was young, just probably like when you were young, your parents used to say, don't talk to strangers to protect you. Now I'm telling you that you can make a fortune turning strangers into friends. Look at how we met. If you look at the word belief, and many of the beliefs that we're holding on to are what is limiting ourself or our success. And right in the middle of the word belief is the word lie. So the point is, which of your beliefs are you holding on to that are slowing you down or even stopping you from creating the success that you deserve? And I believe that everybody, if they put forth the proper action and consistently modifies, because every action gives you a result. So sometimes you need to refine your result, your actions, so that you get better results. But if you consistently put forth the proper actions, that you will end up creating the results that you want, that will allow you to create a better life for yourself.
Wow. I love how you eloquently you can put this into words. You're full of gold, Robert. What is the next stage for you? I mean, you reached a certain level of success. I get you got amazing relationships around you. What is this, if there is one, what is driving you now? What is the next, what would you celebrate in 5 years' time?
in 5 years' time, and there's an old parable about the starfish thrower, and you can always go to YouTube and look it up, or there's many different renditions of it. But it says this man throws this next starfish, as the boy says, "What are you doing?" back into the ocean. Said, "I made a difference to that one." I mean, the realization, Tony Robbins, hit the nail on the head. Canny, constant, never-ending improvement. So I always want to be sharpening my saw, focus on what I can do to improve my skill set, so I can be more impactful with people. Because if I'm going to live a life of meaning, it's based on helping other people. I've been blessed. I made a lot of money, and with some of the money that I made, we used it appropriately, so that money grew. I mean, obviously there's certain things that I did that I wasted a lot of money, and that's a whole nother story. But again, that goes back to what I mentioned earlier. That was experience. That way I can be more impactful and effective as I'm, helping other people go through the process that they need to go through. But so as I look back, 5 or 10 or 15 years, because I never will stop working, because I love what I do. I look at Harvey McKay, who's a 70-year friend of my mom's, and she actually introduced me to him last year. I've sort of modeled myself after him. His book was Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty. Now, I would like to add to his title, which is Don't Stop Digging Until You Hit Either Gold or Water. Don't stop learning, because one insight that you learn, be it from your podcast or other podcasts or a book that you read, can have a significant positive impact. But why do I say this? A couple of weeks ago, he just had his 90th birthday, and this guy is still focused on making a difference. I've got to admire somebody that's living that kind of a life. And so if I'm going to be looking back, 20 years from today, because I turned 90 in about 20 years. Hopefully I'll be still at it, making a positive difference, and, living that life of meaning.
Yeah, Robert, I hear you. Probably a long and healthy life what's what I've gathered recently, is a life of meaning, contribution, probably amazing relationship. That was the Harvard study I've heard about. Would you say that that is how life could expand into longevity and health? It's got a lot to do with it.
I mean, that's a lot to do with it. One of the keys that I've done is I've taken the complexity and simplified it. So how that relates to everything, and it's just going back to your mindset and your body. So it's become more conscious and aware of the negative things that you're putting in your mind and body, and do less. And replace that with more of the positive things that you can put in your mind, which goes back to my story after I listened to Wayne Dyer's cassette tape series, and body. As far as your body, and I remember listening to, and I don't know if they've got the program where you live, which is called 60 Minutes. And there was a guy that got on 60 Minutes from a food company. And he basically said, my job is to make the foods addictive. Why do you think Lay's potato chip has the slogan, I bet you can't eat one? Most people look at food as something, as an enjoyable thing, not as something that's going to feed your body. So again, it's healthy mind, healthy body. You've got to obviously drink a lot of liquids so it can continually cleanses your body, and exercise and meditate and reflect. So, I mean, there's more than one piece of the puzzle, but to make your life work, you've got to put all those pieces together.
Yeah, Robert, you really hit that nail on the head. When we go shopping, we look at aisles almost as not for human consumption.
Yeah.
The sugary aisles, the all of these sugary drinks. I'm like, well, for us, the supermarket, because we are looking after ourselves, is half size, because we wouldn't even venture into the places where most people go to. But going back to that starfish example, I really love that story. And I want to challenge that idea, because absolutely that changes one life or one starfish, but would you say changing one has a massive ripple effect? Do you want to elaborate on this idea that you change one life, you help one person? Would that be expanding to a larger scale?
The answer is 100% agree with that. Think about, and I mentioned a little bit about Jim Rohn, or maybe I didn't, but Jim Rohn is one of the my indirect mentors. Actually, I ended up speaking on stage with him 3 or 4 times. But going back to Jim Rohn, Earl Schultz changed his life by him attending the seminar. Now, Anthony Robbins, who ended up working for him, look at how many people he's changed. Think about the changes that are going on. There's so many different ways today to get our message. We can digitize it and get our message into the right audience. So that ripple effect, as long as you're acting with proper action. So, again, it's having that vision, having the knowingness that if you're going back to the movie, Fields of Dream, build it and they will come. If you are committed to changing more people's lives with the technology that's out there today, it's easier to do that than it was in the past.
Yes, Robert, very insightful. I found that myself. I've been creating, mindset related, self-worth related videos now for a few years. And I created an archive of videos that I could find people, I can refer them to it, because as you said, I've created resources in the past where I didn't have the audience, or I didn't have that many. And now it is an absolute asset because people can use it as a free academy, a free transformation resource. And now it's the easiest to do that than ever before. Would you say, like, the opportunities these days are immense?
No question about it. I mean, when I opened the vault to you, when we did our 1-on-1, look at all those resources. I mean, there are so many different people, and this. Let me stop for a second, because if you really look at what's happening, there's a good and bad in relationship to what's happening. There's so much confusion in the marketplace because people can manipulate the marketplace. They've got all these different things that are going on in the marketplace. One of the things I've come to the realization is a confused mind's natural state is immobility. So that's the negative side. The positive side, for the people that are putting that stuff together and really want to make a difference. And that's why the kind of work that you do, the kind of work that I do, is so important, because we're focused on helping more people get the right message out so that we can have the positive impact and changes that will allow more people to get away from the struggle and get more into the flow and the creation and making a positive difference. So to me, it's more important today than ever before to help other people, because we're all in it together. And I love the acronym of TEAM, which is together everybody achieves miracles. It's creating that miracle so that we can have, so other people can make more of a positive impact.
It sounds so true to me. When you were telling me this, in my mind, I have been picturing you and me with the, remember the Coke example, purifying minds in the lab. Tiny bit more clarity, tiny bit more evergreen principles to get onto the next level of leadership and personal development, to then grow that business, grow that idea, grow the seed of what you want in life. So have you got maybe a few trips and tips to the audience, those 5 principles for taking charge in life? And you've already shared a few, but if you want to give us a couple more.
Give more. tip, I don't think there's any tricks, but the acronym for tip is to ensure promptness. So think about it from this perspective. If you're going out for a fine meal and you want to make sure that you get prompt service, do you give the tip at the beginning or the end of the meal? Obviously, if you want to make sure you get prompt service, you probably want to give it at the beginning of the meal. So if you're looking to attract the right people, that you can develop the right kind of relationships, it starts from giving. The more you give, the more you get. So I focus on giving more, being of value, doing what's in the other person's best interest, always knowing that if they get results, you might end up having a customer, or they might end up referring people, or if nothing else, you're going to feel good because you knew or know that you showed up and did the right thing. So again, if it's going back to the core of living a life of meaning, it's being of a significant positive impact whenever and wherever you can, and having the right attitude as you go through life. I remember a story, and I think this is relevant in relationship to what we're talking about right now. But it's about this young boy that wants to fool this wise man. And so he comes to the wise man and he said, "Wise man, I've got a bird in my hand. Is it alive or is it dead?" The wise man for a minute hesitates and thinks. And he realizes that if he says it's alive, the boy will put his hands together before he opens them, crushing the bird to death. If he says it's dead, he will open it up and watch the bird fly away. So the wise man says, "Son, the fate of that bird is in your hands." If people come to the realization that their fate, they've got responsibility. I think of another cartoon, and because quite often people deal with fear. And there's a couple different acronyms of fear, but the one I like the best as it relates to the story of the Lion King is, Simba, Mufasa's son, was out he ran away from what he thought he was responsible for, not taking responsibility. And so he's living a life of Riley with a warthog and a couple of other, creatures. And he's looking into this puddle. And all of a sudden he hears that voice from the hereafter, his dad speaking to him. And his dad said, "Son, you are more than you have become." So as people realize that, because quite often people end up settling for just living a life of getting by, but they come to the realization that they can make much more of a positive impact as long as they take the proper action. So I guess that would be what I would want to leave people. It doesn't matter where you start in life. It doesn't matter where you are now. The key is the direction you're headed and where you choose to end up. Life is about the choices we make. We can always adjust and make different choices that will give us different results.
Amazing. There is always another level of leadership. There's always another level of abundance. There's always another level of unlocking harmony in relationships, and of course in health. So where can people find you, Robert? Where are your contacts? How could they get in touch?
Very easy. To go to my calendar at Calendly, CALENDLY.com/my last name Butwin. Now, when they're filling in, and by the way, Butwin is spelled Butwin. When they're filling it in, they need to write down the fact that they heard me on your podcast, Heroes Podcast, because again, I don't want to be just taking, I want to know who and where they heard from me from. So again, it's Butwin. My name's Robert Butwin, and my famous tagline, just remember, with Robert, you do nothing Butwin.
I wanted to ask you, how did you capitalize on that name through decades of business?
It actually started off when I was going through college, and I put together IM teams, and we were called Butts Bombers. And so as we continually evolve in our thinking, because we're putting different thoughts into our mind, you continually refine the things that you're doing so that you are positioning yourself the most effective.
So is there anything else you wanted to give away as a gift, or is there anything else that you wanted to share before we come to the end of this wonderful conversation?
Well, the biggest thing I can share is set a half an hour of your time. Look at the impact it had on you. If people are willing to take that action, then there's a bigger gift afterwards, because I open my vault of all this other information. But if they're not even interested in setting a time to have a conversation so I can understand where they are in relationship to where they want to be, because again, my whole focus is within a 30-minute conversation of me understanding them. And I'm not going to sit there and try to sell them, that I can help them based on what they're doing, take the next step, elevate and accelerate their success.
Robert, I loved having a chat with you, and here we are. Reach out to Robert, because he's got the vault. He's got a lot of things that you probably need at this stage in life, because as we talked about it, there's always another level. Thank you very much for your time, and I would love to have a chat again in the future.
Anytime. Thank you.